Welcome back to Effortless Coding. My name is Samuel and I'm glad that you've joined us in this new episode. Today we'll be talking about PHP variables and how to use them in your PHP file or your PHP coding. So remember, we've been dealing with a file called myfirstphpproject.php. I want you to open, as you can see on my screen, just open that myfirstphpproject.php so that at least once we are discussing the variables, we'll be actually doing a practical based on that. So one thing that you should note about PHP variables is that they automatically convert from type to type. Unlike other programming languages like Python, where you cannot convert a variable to another automatically. You have to use some functions, inbuilt functions like int and all that, to be able to convert, for example, from string to integer. In PHP, that is done automatically. So that is one thing you should know about PHP variable types. You should also know that in PHP, unlike other programming languages again, we denote variables with a leading $sign. In PHP, the value of the variable is its most recent assignment. Now, as you can see on my screen, type $x is equals to 5, then semicolon. Then underneath it, type echo variable x, then end it with a semicolon. Then go and refresh on your browser and see the value it will give. It should say number 5. Then underneath that, say variable x is equals to 10 and put a semicolon. Delete the previous echo statement so that we only have the first one, which is variable x is equals to 5, and now the second one, variable x is equals to 10, semicolon. Now under variable x is equals to 10, type echo variable x, semicolon, and then go to your browser and refresh. You should be able to see, instead of 5, you should be able to see 10, meaning a variable is always assigned its most recent assignment. So in this case, the most recent assignment to the variable x is 10 and not 5. Now variables are assigned with the equals to sign. As you can see on that particular previous example, we said x, which is $x, which is the variable, is equals to 5. So the is equals to sign, just one is equals to sign, it's called the equal operator, is the one that is used to assign variables. And what appears on the left side of the variable is what we call, it's the variable itself. So like x, variable x, that is the variable. What appears on the right hand side of the equal operator is the expression that is to be assigned to the variable. So always know that what is on the left side is the variable, what is on the right hand side is the expression. So you can even have, for example, let's go back to my first PHP project.php. Underneath what we did, just delete the echo. Now instead of having two variables of x's, the second one, I want you to assign it as variable y, so that it reads variable x is equals to 5, variable y is equals to 10. Then underneath that, as you can see on my screen, I want you to type the following: create another variable called variable z, and say variable z is equals to variable y, or rather variable x plus variable y, and then put a semicolon. Just underneath variable z, the variable z and the expression, just underneath it, I want you to type echo variable z. So go to your browser and refresh. Once you refresh, as you can see on my screen, you should be able to see the number 15, which is x plus y. So remember, if you go back to our Sublime editor, the variable, we'll just focus on the variable z is equals to variable x plus variable y. In that particular case, variable z is the variable, and what is being assigned to it is an expression which is called a sum expression. So you're adding variable x to variable y and assigning that value to variable z. So always know that the variable is on the left hand side and the expression to be evaluated on the right hand side. Now variables can also be declared before assignment, but it's not a must. So you can declare a variable before assigning it. So you can just say variable x and then just say variable x then semicolon, without assigning it to any value. Then once you start your coding, you can assign it to a specific value, but it's not a must that it's, for me, I always feel like it's more repetitive, so I would rather just declare my variable when I'm using it. But you can still declare it before you assign that particular value to that particular variable. Now, the variables that are used before being assigned always have default values. So for example, if I say variable x and I put a semicolon, it already has a default value, even if you've not assigned it a value. The default value is either, if it's a string, it's an empty string. If it's a number, it's an empty number. So just know all variables, even if you've not assigned it to any value, have default values. So let's talk about 8 data types that are actually used in PHP. And as you can see on my screen, I'll actually list them. So the first one is what we call an integer. An integer refers to whole numbers that don't have a decimal. So once you write number 8, number 1, number 352, 1,000,002, those are what we call integers. Now, what if a number has a decimal? If a number has a decimal, that data type is called a double. So they are called floating point numbers. Floating point numbers are numbers that have a decimal point, like 1.234. That is called a double. It's a data type called double in PHP. Then we also have another data type called Boolean. Boolean, basically, any variable that is Boolean in nature has 2 values. It's either true or false. So always know that when you're using a Boolean data type, the only possible values for that particular expression can only be true or false. Yeah. Then we also have null. Null is a data type, is a special type with only one value, and that value is null. Remember, 0 is a value. 0 is not null. So if you assign a variable to 0, that does not mean that that variable is null. Null means it has only one value, that is nothing, like it's nothing. Another word, another synonym for null is nothing. So once you assign a variable to nothing, then it becomes a null variable, right? So if you declare a variable as null, it means it's nothing, right? It holds nothing. You'll understand it when we use it. But just remember, when you put a space or you put 0 and assign that to a variable, that is not null. So I want you to get that point very clearly, because a space is a character in coding. 0 is also assumed to be a value in coding. Then we have another data type called strings, which is a sequence of characters. We have arrays. We'll deal with it later on. Arrays are named and indexed collections of other values. We'll see how we apply that in real life situation. We have what we call objects, as you can see on my screen. It just refers to instances of programmer defined classes. So when we'll be dealing with classes, we'll see how we handle objects with classes. Remember, these are procedural PHP tutorial, but when we get to objects, we'll switch to a more advanced object-oriented PHP programming, and that is where we'll find objects very important. Then finally, we have a special variable called a special data type called resources. So these are special variables that hold references to resources that are external to PHP, such as DB connections. We'll handle that when we come to that. So I hope you have an idea of what data types we have in PHP, and I've already explained what a variable is in PHP. I hope you've understood 1 or 2 things with this particular tutorial. In the next tutorial, we'll be handling integers as a data type. So until next time, kudos!